Got it. All right. I am with Scott Adams to talk about his locals community. How are you doing today, Scott? Nice to speak with you.
I'm doing terrific. Thanks for having me.
You have a lot of fans in my community as well. Actually, there's a lot of artists. And I think one of the things I really wanted to talk to you about specifically as someone who is actually creating art is how you use that in your community.
Okay. Yes. What is that the question? How do I
Yeah,
use art?
how do you share that with your locals community?
So I've got a pretty eclectic community. So sometimes they'll see comics that I make that are too naughty to share with the general public or too provocative. So it's a separate comic called Robots Read News. And it's always just the same robot reading the news, and I can talk about the headlines and stuff. So I do that, but I also get to write. I get to talk about persuasion, dozens of different topics, usually from the headlines. So something it's usually about current events. And then I try to put a persuasion filter on that. So half the time I'm talking, really objectively about how to be logical and figure stuff out. And half the time I'm just doing art just for fun.
Yeah, one of the things I saw that was really cool was you kind of showing the process of actually creating one of your comics. And I think that's really cool and special. How does it differ from the stuff that you're putting out more publicly? The stuff you put behind the paywall?
Well, publicly, I put out stuff that's finished and GP rated generally.
Yeah.
So those are the two things. Usually it's something that's going to make me money. It's completely finished, and editors have looked at it, and it's clean enough for the general public. The things I put on locals are anything that I think doesn't fit that model.
Mm-hmm.
So it could be a work in progress. So I'll show people things before I'm done. I'll show them a comic I'm working on that might get me in trouble, and I don't know if I'm going to finish it. So they see lots of false starts. And it's a lot more, I think, revealing because you see all the errors.
Mm-hmm.
If you see somebody like me and the only thing you know about me is my public face, you would imagine that I hit home runs after, one home run after another because I don't let you see the strikeouts. I hide those from you. You don't see any of those. But, there are, of course, 10 times more strikeouts than there are home runs. And the locals people get to see the strikeouts and the home runs. So they're seeing a much deeper dive into what the creative process looks like. They're seeing about risk taking. They're seeing about how to make a decision about when to take a risk and when not. So they're deeper into the process. They're not just seeing the outcome.
That's really cool. How much do they inform the process at all? Do you get inspiration from them?
Tons, yeah.
Yeah.
Most of my Dilbert comic comes from suggestions from the locals community now.
Oh, interesting.
And it's a huge advantage. I just open up a chat, say I need to make some comics, help me out, and they just flood it with complaints about work, and it's just wonderful stuff. So if you get it fresh because people are thinking about it, it's on their mind, that's the good stuff. And they also are very, let's say, involved in everything from the quality of the audio on the program to you can't believe the comments I get about my bookshelf. The things behind me, people really care about what's presented, the order of them. Sometimes one of the books is a little out of order, that bothers them a little bit too. So yeah, it's I would say that locals is what's the best way to say it? It's an interactive sort of a group effort.
Yeah, it is like a think tank.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm like the leader, but the product is really the group expression.
Yeah, that's something that keeps coming up as I talk to more and more creators, that there does seem to be there is a more communal feel than perhaps other places where you can put your work. There's just a general community partaking in something, and they create something of their own that takes on a life of its own. I know you've said in the past that you would never stop working because it was so much of what informed your comics. And now it seems like you have access to people who are still in those office settings.
Yeah. I've always had access to them in different ways, from email or whatever. But this is the most direct access, because not only do they give me ideas, but as they're giving me ideas, I can tell them what makes that a good idea or not. So I can say,
Wow.
oh, it doesn't have this quality, or people have used this one to death, or whatever. So they're learning how to write jokes.
Yeah.
So everybody on my platform gets at least one micro lesson at least a week, which
Wow.
I kind of guarantee people that for their $7 a month, or if they get an annual, it's like $5 a month, that they'll give something like thousands of dollars of value.
Yeah. Are there
For
a
the time.
lot of creators, people who want to be perhaps comic strip writers, joke writers? Are there a lot of people in your community who are attempting to do that?
Yeah, there are a lot of people who want to write books, for example,
Mm,
or they want to do something different or creative. So that's sort of my sweet spot, is taking people who want to make a move and they're not sure, what do I need? How do I do that? And that's what my book, How to Fail at Almost Everything and Still Win Big, was about, which is about building systems instead of goals to achieve
mm-hmm.
what you want. And also about how to build a talent stack, a set of talents that work well together. They're not just individually good, but they work well together. Because that's the stuff I teach the people on my channel, and I model it. So they can see me taking on, say, a new task, such
Mm-hmm.
as the live stream successful. So a lot of people got to see me from the first days of just pure experimentation, where literally the first time I live streamed, I just picked up my phone and I saw this thing. At the time it was Twitter and Periscope, and I thought, hey, what's this do?
Uh-huh.
I'll turn it on, see if anybody's there. I think 4 people showed up,
Uh-huh.
or grew to like 12 people eventually. And then I got better equipment, and the audience grew, and I figured out what I was going to talk about. But I modeled completely every step in my book about how to build the compatible skills and how to just work through the statistics of success, when to know when to bail out, when not to. For example, one of the things I teach people is that if people take your work and extend it, then you have a winner. Even if it's not profitable yet, stick with it, because that's a good sign. But if they just say, yeah, that's good, but they don't do anything with it, you probably don't have something. So when I started doing the live streams and doing the micro lessons, people started putting together their own indexes of how to build them and how to combine them differently, et cetera. And that's one of the things I teach, is you look for that. Because if
Right.
you can find people extending your product in any way, that means you really have something. And it
And
happened with Dilbert in the beginning too.
what do you mean by extending your product?
Well, in the Dilbert sense, when Dilbert was just a cartoon strip, people would cut out the comic and put it together in like a binder, and they would make their own book. And they would
Wow.
say, here are the ones about sales, and here are the ones about leadership. And that's an extension of the product. Likewise, with the micro lessons, people were saying, I like these, but I'm going to extend it. People were making their own. In some
Right.
cases, they were sharing them. They were building indexes and sharing the indexes, et cetera. So when you see anything like that, that's an extension that adds value to your product, you have something.
That's really interesting. And I love the idea of creating systems and modeling that. I find as a creative, it's one of the most challenging things is creating those systems and being disciplined. You seem, from my outside perspective, like someone who is not just prolific, but very disciplined. Do you talk a lot about this stuff in your community?
Yeah.
And as aside from just modeling it, what have you learned from the people in your community?
Well, I go back to real basic stuff. So, you can't be creative or anything else until you get a good night's sleep, right? That's going to change your diet. It's going to change your exercise, your creativity, everything. So I start with real basic stuff. Are you healthy?
Mm-hmm.
What are you doing about that? Then you can get to the work part and the skill stacks and all that. So yes, there's an interactive process with my audience who's continually saying this worked, this didn't work, which is the experimenting towards success part. And then as they extend products, that gives me the signal that I've got something. So that's my
Mm-hmm.
reward. That's
Mm-hmm.
the part that tells me, oh, I got a little reward. Somebody
Mm-hmm.
liked this so much that they told me, or they did something with it. So yeah, it's like one big interactive fun fest.
I know it's fascinating to watch the explosion of this creative class. There was a book written about it, I think back in 2005 or six, the rise of the creative class. And now I feel we're really seeing that. Do you encourage your people in your community to go start their own communities, or what advice do you give somebody who may not be at your level of being a creative, but might want to start sharing their artwork or sharing their product or dipping their toe in exposing themselves?
Well, as you might imagine, if you're a well-known cartoonist, you get a lot of people asking you for advice, not just on cartooning, but how to do something in the artistic field. And I usually give some form of the same advice. Practice every day, right? You're trying to be an artist and you're not drawing every day, you're not really too serious. If you're trying to be a writer and you're not writing something every day, you're not too serious about it. So I give advice like that. You know, basically how to enter the process and how to get yourself a little bit pregnant. For example, one of the things I teach is that you might have several things you're interested in, or it could be just one, but you should do something to move that forward. Could be a micro step. It could be all you do is find a phone number of somebody you're going to call later, or you make one call, or you research one source of something that might be useful. But if you do these little steps, at some point you're going to find out that the project grows an interest in your mind, and then it starts dragging you. That's when, if your project isn't pulling you and you have to push it, that's not going to work, right? In the creative sense, if you're just working, it's all just work, yeah, that's a bad signal. The signal you want is that you wake up in the morning, you can't wait to get to it, right? Oh, there's a chapter I really want to write now because this is going to be good, or the comic you want to write, or whatever your art is. And but you have to push first to see if there's enough there that it can drag you. So it's a push, then wait, then get dragged. And I do that process over and over. I'll just push a bunch of stuff. You'll have 15 doors, and I'll just go to each one and push them. One will crack a little bit. I'll go, oh, all right, stick my head in, see how that goes. But at some point, something has to grab me by the shirt and pull me through the door, or I'm not going to have the energy to do it.
Don't you find even after you're getting dragged, there are moments where you're still slogging through some of the, I would say, the second act, of a story where you're slogging through the middle, where
Right.
you've been pulled and inspired, and now there's the rewrites or the challenge you might be stuck on.
Yeah, every one of these projects has a part that's just deadly boring, no matter how the big part is, right? For me, it's the drawing.
Oh, right.
The characters sort of look the same every time. Like, oh, not again, not again. So I have an assistant who does my finished drawings, so it takes a lot of the pressure off. What was the question? I lost the question. I started talking about something else.
Just how you get through those.
Oh, the hard parts. Right?
The slog, yeah. I had a friend who was a really brilliant character designer, and he said when I first started writing, it was when I was 19 and moved to LA, and I just loved it, and I got to do it whenever I wanted. And he said, Bridget, enjoy these days because someday you'll turn your muse into a mule. And I think about that all the time when I'm on deadline or when I'm feeling like that. Like you said, there are parts of anything people think like, oh, you're living the dream, and in many ways I am, but they don't see the business side of it, the ad reads, whatever it might be. That there's always a part of your job that's a job.
I like your muse to mule analogy from your friend there. There's a version of that I use when people ask me, don't you have the best job in the world? I mean, you're just drawing comics. You would do that even just for fun, and you get paid for it. And I explain it this way. I go, it's like somebody came to you and said, your job for the next 30 years is just to eat ice cream. And you're like, I love ice cream. Ice cream is great. And they say, just one thing. You have to finish a barrel a day. Barrel a day. So it's always about quantity. Like if I can do just the amount I want, it's terrific. So to that point, on Locals, I said I have this alternate cartoon called Robots Read News. I do that strictly when I feel like it.
Great.
There's no exception. I have to want to do it or it doesn't get done. There will never be a day I make myself do it. And I love it every time because I only do it. I love it.
Yeah, I think as creatives, you have to keep that kind of space. Tony Robbins always says, "Go where the juice is," which I loved. I really latched onto that many years ago when I heard it, because it is that, like you said, it's that push. And as creatives, you get so many questions about how do you know which idea to follow? I have so many ideas. How do I know what to do? And I love the aspect of locals that it filters your biggest fans, your super fans, the people who are the most engaged and know your work. I mean, I have people in my community who have read everything I've written and have listened to all my podcasts, and they remember. I am so bad about remembering. I'm like a shark. I just do stuff and then move forward. And so they have a better memory often for stuff that I said and did. And I find that kind of institutional knowledge really valuable.
Well, don't you find I'm in the same situation, which is my memory's been outsourced,
Right.
not just by phone, but like
Yeah.
now I'm storing memories in thousands of people all around the world, and I can recall them anytime I want. I just get a live stream and say, "What did I say about?" And then they tell me. It's instant. It's literally instant.
That's really fascinating, actually. Locals, I didn't even think about that aspect of locals, but you're absolutely right. It is like outsourcing my memory. Are constantly reminding me of things I said that I forgot, and I'll want to know for a column idea what's something, sometimes you're just on deadline and you're, like you said, you're just stuck, or you need new fresh ideas, or you're maybe talking about something that you actually haven't written. And that is where I find the community aspect of locals so valuable as somebody
Right.
who's creative. Do you have, obviously, one of the biggest questions that everybody was asking me in my community to ask you is who is your inspiration as somebody who creates a comic strip?
Well, the inspiration has changed, in different times in my life. When I was a kid, it was Charles Schultz and a few other cartoonists, Gary Larson and Sergio Aragonis, etc. Mad Magazine, and so they were the original inspirations. I would say more in the adult world. I tend to look for people like Elon Musk,
Interesting.
because not only in terms of risk taking and rational decision, but how big he goes and how big he
Mm.
goes for humanity. I mean, obviously, there's always something about the person who's doing it, but I mean, he's trying to save the world. I mean, he's colonizing space so that the next million years of human life can survive. I mean, that is so big that, I mean, it's hard to even hold in your head how big that is. So it's people like that that inspire me, people who are doing something big.
And you talk a lot about persuasion in your community and just online. Do you still do the morning coffee chats?
Yeah,
Okay.
so every morning at 10 a.m. Eastern time, it's the same time, 7 days a week, vacation, holidays, doesn't matter. I'll be here at the same time. And I talk about what's new that day and try to add some useful knowledge about how persuasion is changing your filter on things, basically.
How did I think we all have our things that we get kind of obsessed with, or our themes. How did persuasion become such an important theme in your life?
When I was a kid, my mother told the kids that when she gave birth to my younger sibling, my sister, that my mother was hypnotized by our family doctor who did the delivery, and she didn't feel pain. And so I'm a kid and I hear this and I go, wait a minute, the most painful thing in the world, I hear, childbirth, you didn't have any drugs and you didn't feel pain. Now that was her story. I don't know if it's real or not. Years go by and you wonder how real it was, but it got me interested, and I became a certified hypnotist when I
Oh,
was
okay.
in my early 20s. So once you become a hypnotist, then it changes your view of everything. So you just
Hmm.
start seeing people as persuadable and programmable, and you don't see them as having free will or any kind of logical process. They look like irrational things that are wandering around waiting for the next thing that programs them. And once you start seeing the world that way, it's first of all really useful because it
Hmm.
explains everything. You don't get confused anymore. You go, oh, I know why that person's acting that way. It's because X. So it was certainly one of the two most useful things I've ever learned outside of reading, writing, and arithmetic.
Wow.
As an adult, by far the most useful, immediately impactful skill.
That's funny. You reminded me of a story that my grandmother told me, that she was told she couldn't have kids, and she then had 10 kids because she prayed to God. She was like, I just prayed and prayed and prayed to God, and then I had 10 kids. Years later, after she was long past, we were all on the beach with all my aunts. There are 5 girls on that side of the family. And I was telling that story. I'm like, it's amazing that Mame just had 10 kids after she prayed, and they all started dying laughing. They said she didn't pray. She went to a Jewish doctor in the Bronx who told her she had a thyroid problem and gave her thyroid medication. Because that was a really persuasive argument for believing in God. Like, you couldn't have kids and then you had 10 children. And then I find out.
Hey, maybe God sent her to the doctor.
Maybe. It was hilarious. They were laughing so hard. They're like, your God is a Jewish doctor in the Bronx, Bridget. But I still love that.
That's a good story.
She was a character. I loved her. That's really interesting about the persuasion and hypnotism. How do you kind of guard yourself against audience capture?
Describe audience capture.
So audience capture, I think for people like you or me or anybody with a following, is the algorithm is obviously influencing our own decisions, and our audience is reacting to things that we're saying and doing. And whether we want to keep ourselves honest and reasonable, there's still that reward center that's being, lit up in our brain when we do something they like, and the reaction when we don't do something that they perhaps disagree with. I always joke, like, the minute you get a lot of followers on Twitter, for one thing, you have to tweet like something completely the opposite just to keep your following honest. But how do you guard how do you guard yourself against that subtle persuasion that's happening to your own mind?
Yeah, that's a real thing. And the answer, unfortunately, it might not be as useful to you as you want it to be. I have fuck you money.
Yeah.
So, and that
is not useful to me.
Right. So if you've never heard that, if anybody's listening who's never heard the phrase, it just means that I don't need any particular success in the future because I have enough money already. So I do things that I find will be useful. That's my main thing. It's got to be useful for other people. And then if I can satisfy that and build a business model around it where I make money too, that's great. But I start with, it's just got to be really useful for other people. So given that that's my criteria, I just make sure I'm being useful. And if I get canceled or semi-canceled because of it, I still look at, well, was it useful? Did it help somebody? If I got a little bit canceled, but it helped somebody, I'm okay with that. Today, for example, when I did my live stream, I actually advised people not to watch it because I knew they would cancel me for what I was saying, because it was opposite what a lot of their opinions would be. Now, of course, in my case, I go through the thinking and the persuasion and the logic of it so they can see how I got to mine and compare it to their own situation, make their own decision. But I know that the content I put out there today would predictably reduce my income by 1%, just today. That was just what I did today.
Right.
So imagine if I did that every day.
Right.
Expensive. When I started talking about Trump, I was fully aware that that would be hugely expensive because people would penalize me in my day job for anything I said about politics. And sure enough, probably cost me 30% of my income.
Interesting.
But it didn't slow me down. I mean, I can't think of any time that I edited myself because of my income. I can't think of a time I've ever done that.
Do you find that locals gives you certain freedom to be authentic and honest, or is it just you don't really even care either way?
It gives me that freedom for sure, because it, first of all, using the word captures, it filters out, as you said, the people who like you.
Hmm.
So if they're paying money to see me, they're far less likely to be the type of person who's going to go all snowflake about something I said.
Hmm.
So that helps. And I do care in the sense that I don't want them to turn me off for the wrong reason.
Mm.
But if it's the right reason, it's a content that they don't appreciate for whatever reason, then, I'm okay with that. It's a big world. They can find something they like. It doesn't have to be me. And
Mm.
as long as there are enough people, see, this is really the benefit of having a large enough audience. If I'm making 1 million people a day happy, I can lose 10,000.
Right.
That's a lot of people to be angry at you. You have 10,000 people who are pretty angry at you and cancel you. If you didn't have 1 million who were on your side, that would seem like a big deal. So I just get more people on my side than against me, and I feel pretty good.
Yeah, I think it's harder at the lower, probably in my space, in my, I hate to use the word level, but I guess level is appropriate. Where I have a lot of exposure, but I don't have the protection of fuck you money, and I don't have the padding to lose as many people. So I just have to always keep myself honest by just being honest. I mean, I can't sell out my truth and perspective because of money. I never did. I didn't start that way. But I see it even with like I see it even with people who have fuck you money. There's still fear in the air. And
Right.
I did an interview with a detransitioner for my podcast, and I had people with massive followings DM me, privately text me about this interview and joke about how welcome to the cancel club, and joke about how and say like, wow, this is an amazing interview, but would they ever share it with their huge audience? No, because they're still afraid to assert, I'm like, you have millions and millions of dollars in followers and you're still afraid. So I
Well,
don't know that it's true that even if you have fuck you money, you're not, some people are still
yeah,
protecting themselves.
I guess the second part of that is you have to learn how to deal with embarrassment and shame. And I might be the world's expert at that because I've had so many embarrassments and shamed so often that that stuff doesn't even really enter into my calculation. When I think, oh, I will be really embarrassed in public if I do X, I don't even weigh that. Honestly, I don't. It just doesn't even enter my mind because I've just been there so many times. Like, yeah, sometimes things are embarrassing.
Yeah.
Still here.
Yeah, I've seen you trend on Twitter before, I think, for I don't know what reason,
It's
but
never good.
I'm sure, yeah. I always joke like the only reason I want to be trending on Twitter is because I'm dead. Um, but it is one of those things that I think builds up your immunity to those kinds of moments in life where you say something that's taken out of context, or you just go you have to take risks, and we live in a culture
Yeah.
that is so risk averse, clearly. Risk averse creatively, but risk averse like in general.
Here's two things on risk. One is that having locals plus my day job of being a cartoonist makes both of them safer because it's
Mm-hmm.
just standard diversification. One
Yeah.
of them canceled, maybe the other one's still there. The other thing is that to reduce your chance of getting canceled for saying the things that people want to cancel you for, I mean, they want to cancel you, you have to fully embrace their opinion and express it before you disagree with it. It's called pacing and leading in hypnosis. But I try to do that rigorously. So when I'm talking about especially any COVID vaccination kind of stuff, people are really polarized. So
Mm-hmm.
since I know they're polarized and I know how they're polarized, I will fully express their opinion before I give mine. And that gives people some comfort. All right, at least you heard me. All right.
Right.
Now I'll listen to where you're disagreeing because you've perfectly expressed what I feel.
Right.
So I know you understand it. And people care about that. They want you to understand it more than they want you to maybe agree.
Right.
And that, if you get that part right, you're in pretty good shape.
Do you do is the coffee thing for everyone? Is it public or is that just for your community?
Well, it started out as a public thing, and it remains public on YouTube. And when I do the live streaming, it's still in beta on Locals. So when I do that live streaming, I keep the door open so anybody can watch their platform. Eventually, I might close it, and I'm keeping the option open that if YouTube deletes me, then I might just go to Locals and keep it there.
Or is YouTube going to delete you?
Well, I get demonetized almost every day.
Oh, wow.
So we have to have a human reverse it. And yeah, I mean, I feel like I'm on the warning track all the time.
Right.
I haven't done anything that would violate any YouTube standards, but I'm not sure that that's what would keep you safe.
Right.
Because,
right.
You know, some subjectivity there.
Right. Yeah, that's what I do love about Locals is I feel, I always joke, at least I'll get a phone call if they're going to boot me off, or I know what the standards are, and the ability to set your own standards and set your own rules for your community is, you know, my rule is just don't be a dick. That's like the number one rule in our community. And I feel it's very simple, and we have other things, but that's really it. I feel like human interaction is generally pretty simple if you're not a dick.
And you haven't been canceled for your sexist.
Yeah. Oh,
don't be a dick.
Yeah.
And don't be either.
Don't be a dick. Yeah. I just I'm very interested to see how these little communities connect and grow moving into the future, as I think more people, you know, there's that kind of public square of Twitter and all of these platforms, but as those platforms control more and more what people are allowed to see and say, people are going to be retreating to these other places.
Yeah, and there's a big difference between the huge platforms and a Locals community, because the huge platform is mostly people fighting. You know, they're there for the fight half the time. And
they love the fight.
Yeah, they're there for a million different reasons. But within Locals, it's almost like a new living entity is being formed.
Mm-hmm.
That's the collection of the people in it, because they have something closer to a. Sorry about that.
That's
so
all right.
It's something closer to a shared vision of what the. I'll have to turn that off.
A landline. A relic of the past.
You know, I didn't even know I had a landline until I was like, I still have a landline apparently. I don't know. I mean, I haven't taken a call or used that in a year, but it's there. Somebody found it to spam it, I guess. So, I don't know. Did I finish my point?
Oh, the Locals, you're creating your own entity.
Yeah, Locals seems, because people have sort of a shared, you know, vision of the world. It feels like a creature.
Yeah.
Whereas Twitter feels like a
monster.
Chaos. Right? It's like one's an animal and the other is a jungle.
Yeah.
It's very different.
Yep. I love that. Well, I don't want to take too much of your time, so I really appreciate you sitting down and talking about your community. And it sounds a lot like mine, in the sense that it's very much representative of you, which is the other thing I love about Locals is, and I was saying this on the last interview I did, it goes from me to we, which I really appreciate. It's not so me centered. It's what are we creating? I try to emphasize a lot in my community is what are we, not so much what we're against. Let's talk about what we're kind of for. I think it's very easy to constantly obsess on what we don't like, and also fun. Obviously, there's a lot of jokes there.
Yeah, and I take quite seriously that I'm trying to make all of them better people.
Yes.
Like if I give them 150 micro lessons, that's about what it is now. At least 10 of them are going to change your life, at least in a small way. So that's really what I'm aiming for.
I love that. Even just the idea of it's systems, not goals is so it will profoundly change your life. Just embracing that idea.
Yeah, I hear that all the time. Almost every day somebody tells me it changed their life.
Mm-hmm. Well, thank you, Scott. This was really great and great to chat with you and get to know you a little bit. And I hope people go check out your community.
Well, thank you. It was fun talking, and I'll also sign up for your community. I have to sign up for a few others. I keep telling myself I need to sign up for more, but I'm going to do that this week.
And enjoy your week and enjoy riling people up, inspiring them and persuading them as you do.
I'll do my best.